to sustainability or actually to any other goal, we need a whole number of steps, a number of tasks, a number of talents. Among them, of course, are we need implementation talents, how to make things happen, how to write laws, how to make policy, how to govern, how to raise money and allocate it, how to muster resources for our goals, all of which I would put in the category of implementation, of making something come into being. Behind that, we need models and information. We need theory. We need to know how to get where we want to go. We need to know how we got up to where we are now, what has gone wrong, what has gone right, how to form the policies to be implemented. And even behind that, we need clarity about our goals. We need to know where we are going. We need to have vision. And that vision has to be articulated. It has to be socially shared and discussed and formulated. It's obvious in the unsustainable world of today that we are lacking in all of these arenas, that we need much more effort in every one of these steps. And we have a world that is not meeting well our goals for sustainability or anything else. There's a tendency when we get involved in the problems that are coming as a result of all of these lacks of implementation, of money, of resources, of models and information and vision. There's a very great tendency to go immediately to implementation and say, and talk first and primarily in that arena. How do we get governments to work better? How do we get the money raised? But before that, we need to be sure that our models are clear, that our information is accurate, and above all, we need to be sure that we know where we're going. We in the, I assume that most of the people here like me are in the information modeling analysis part of the policy process. We tend to focus on the models and the information, and that was what my intention was this morning, because that's my field, was to talk about how our particularly economic models fail, especially our markets, our models of markets and of technology, and most especially our mental models derived from some of the classic economic models, which tell us quite simply that what we need to implement is more technology and better, freer markets, and then that will solve our problems. And I had prepared a quite technical talk with models and computer outputs and so on to make some suggestions of how to do that modeling better. And then on the plane to San Jose yesterday, Bob Costanza reminded me that the title of this session was Envisioning a Sustainable Future. And I realized that I had fallen into the trap that we modelers and that politicians and that almost everybody falls into, which is to take the last steps first, to talk about the implementation or the model with skipping over, taking for granted the vision or the goal. And so what I did was I didn't throw away, I still have them in my room, all those technical slides and the talk, and therefore what I'm about to say has nothing whatsoever to do with the abstract in your little book about this conference. I better talk about vision and encourage us all to do that. A subject, by the way, which I could say I am completely unqualified to talk about, having had no training. In fact, I would say in the scientific northern training I've had, having been systematically untrained to find and communicate vision. But in another sense, I don't think any of us need training. I think what we need to do is to maybe brush away some of our training and rediscover our ability to vision, to see goals, to make the idea of a sustainable world a living picture in our minds and in other people's minds, so that we know what we're talking about and we know where we're going. What I'm going to do is just try to share with you the little bit I have learned by playing with the idea of vision and incorporating it into my own life. I think I probably don't need to tell you that when we, particularly we on the environmental side of things, start talking about a sustainable world, we somehow engender, I don't know if it's us or the audience we're speaking to, a vision of sacrifice, a vision of having much less, a vision of tight central control, of deep regulations, a loss of freedom. Whether we communicate that because it's in our heads or whether it's in the culture we're communicating to, I think you probably know that most environmentalists are not considered people who put forth exciting visions. They generally are assumed to be people who are calling for great sacrifice. And this must say something about the vision in our culture of what a sustainable world is like. And it's not a vision that's likely to mobilize the implementation, the laws, the policy, the resources, or the money that's needed to make the world sustainable. I first ran into, rather literally, the idea and the problem of what our former president called the vision thing. When I ran about 10 years ago a series of workshops all around the world on ending hunger, and a colleague of mine named Peter Senge, who does a lot of vision work, particularly with industry, said you should start each one of these workshops by asking the assembled experts who have spent their lives in the fields of nutrition or agronomy or demography or economics or whatever, have spent their lives trying to eliminate hunger. Just ask them, what would the world look like if there were no hunger? I got solid resistance. In fact, I let it go because it was so interesting, a whole day of argument about why we should not do that. And these were some of the things that were said during that rather contentious day. The workshop more or less fell apart at that point. There was a rebellion on the part of the participants. They said, talking about visions, or even in any way putting forth visions doesn't change anything. That's a waste of time. Let's get down to what laws we need to pass and how we're going to raise money. It's just a waste of time. Let's get on to doing. And other people said, we don't need to talk about what the world would look like ending hunger. It's bad enough to talk about how bad the world is with hunger. That's sufficient to propel us. We can be propelled away from hunger. We don't have to be propelled toward sufficiency. We don't need any motivative force from a positive vision of a world without hunger. I heard from my colleagues that visions are very dangerous things, that Hitler had a vision, that visionaries are people to be viewed with deep suspicion and definitely not to be followed. I heard as we got got the initial resistance off our chest, we got more deep about why we didn't want to do anything about visions. I heard that I'd never really looked at this. I've never really thought about what the world would be like without hunger. It's enough for me to be bothered by the problem, and I've really spent no time thinking about this, which says something really about the way in which these hunger activists had been communicating. They'd been communicating problem, not vision. And then finally, as we got to know each other better and had sort of spent the emotional resistance to vision, people said, I can't stand the pain of looking at the world I really want when I know about the condition the world is in. I can't stand that tension. I really don't want to look at it. I don't want to look at what my dreams are for the human race because it would be too painful to be born. And then finally, at the end, someone said, I can't share my vision with all of you because I don't know you well enough yet. And I was deeply struck and moved because I think we were getting toward the bottom of the reason why there's so little talk of vision, particularly in the expert and scientific community, so little skill in coming to an expression of where we are going. because it's painful and because we're not permitted. It's very interesting. I've been thinking ever since that comment was made, why we can in this culture, at least in the northern culture I come from, we can share our cynicism to total strangers. We can complain. We can talk about everything that we think will never work, but we can't share our dreams, our hopes, our visions, our deepest longings. It's not socially permitted, especially not in scientific forums, and certainly not in economic forums. Why? How did we get that culture? Why can we not talk openly and proudly about what we would like, not what we expect to get, but the world we would like to live in, without being labeled naive, idealists, unrealistic? I don't need to tell you, because those words may be coming up now as you listen to me. This is our cultural reaction to visionaries, or to any human expression of vision. Be quiet, let's get down to work. Stop being so naive and idealistic. And what I noticed, since then I've been very aware of people doing that in my environment. It happens all the time. I'm also become aware that children are natural visionaries. I think that we're all born with a sense of what the world should be like and what we deeply want the world to be like. You ask a child to make a vision of a sustainable world and it comes flowing forth. There's not a day worth of resistance. So this is clearly something that we have had engendered into us by two things, I think. One is the general culture, particularly the scientific objective culture. And secondly, I think by our disappointments as we grow old. We've tried things, they haven't worked. And instead of letting go of our, instead of using the haven't worked disappointments to learn lessons and become more effective in pushing toward our vision, rather we've let go of our vision. We have so many scars, so many disappointments. Well, after that very interesting day-long discussion about why we would not, could not, and should not talk about our vision of a world without hunger, we talked about our visions of a world without hunger. Some people, I think, didn't know that they had these visions in them, but they came pouring out once we got rid of all the reasons that kept them bottled down. And it was one of the most inspiring moments of my life. If you had never thought that you wanted to go work for the end of hunger, if you had heard these visions, you would have been mobilized on the spot to devote your life to ending hunger. They were human value statements from the deepest level of the heart and soul. And they were things I would love to share with the whole world, because I think that that probably is the missing element that keeps the world from ending hunger. If we don't speak about vision out loud, and we don't try for much, and then if we fall a little short of our goal, then we try for even less the next time, and we speak even less about what we really want. This is a positive feedback loop taking us down into a culture of cynicism and of absence of vision. And it says in the Bible, without vision, the people perish. Well, I've learned since then from Peter and other people how more to tap the part of me, I don't know how to describe it, from which vision comes. It's not the intellect, it's not the mind, it's not the rational set of skills that we have as human beings. It comes from another place, which you might call heart or soul or some combination of the two. And since then, I have really never undertaken any project in my personal life without formally doing a vision of what that will look like, whether it's a book or a new institution or a new course in the university. I formally and strictly take time to vision it, to see what it would be like if it were perfect, if it came out exactly the way I wanted. I even, as much as I can, write down that vision and keep referring to it when I lose my way in the process of trying to bring the vision into being. And what I've learned from doing this, and I will bring this in a minute to the question of visioning a sustainable society, I've learned some generalizations about this process for which I was so poorly trained in my culture, which I had to relearn as an adult. One thing I've learned is that it's very difficult at first, it gets easier as you go along, but very important to remember that you are trying to state, articulate, or see what you really want, not what you think you can get. It's very quick for most of us rationally trained people to to sort of go out to the farthest envelope of what we think is possible. That we're putting all kinds of analysis and models in there about what is possible. I never would have said that it was possible for apartheid to end in South Africa, or for the whole of the Eastern world to come back toward democracy, and yet it happened. So that tells you something about our models of possibility. You have to throw them away. You have to think about what you want. That's the essence of vision. What is a sustainable world that you would like to live in, that would satisfy your deepest dreams and longings? Second, if you can get there to that picture, you are under no obligation whatsoever to tell us how to get there from here. This is the easiest way to shoot down a visionary, is to have someone express a vision and you say, oh yeah, but how do we get there from here? And if the visionary can't tell you, then you sweep away the vision. This is our rational left brain working again. My experience in having now many times created a vision and then actually brought it in some form into being, my experience is that I never know at the beginning how to get there, but as I articulate the vision, put it out, share it with people, and it gets more polished and more real, the path reveals itself. And it would never reveal itself if I were not putting out the vision of what I really want and finding that other people really want it too. Holding onto the vision reveals the path, and there's no need to judge the vision by whether the path is apparent. Finally, a few more points. As I said already, the visioning, wherever it comes from, I don't understand this at all, isn't a rational place, and it doesn't come from figuring out. But visions do have to be honed by rationality. There does need to be a responsibility in vision. I can't envision climbing to the top of a tree and flying off. I may really want to do that, but my rationality and my knowledge of how the world works tells me that that's not a responsible vision. Visions become responsible through all sorts of processes. The best one that I know is sharing it with other people who bring in their knowledge, their point of view, and their vision. The more a vision is shared, the more responsible it gets, also the more ethical it gets. The reason that Hitler was a dangerous visionary was that was his vision only. It wasn't the vision of the Jews or the Gypsies or the other nationalities in Europe, and that's why it was a crazy, irresponsible vision. Good modeling and sharing, and as much as possible understanding how the world works, bring a vision to responsibility. I just want to say a couple of words about the power vision, then I want to give you all an exercise in visioning a sustainable world. Another thing I've discovered is once I am clear and have worked on a vision, it becomes more and more real to me. I can literally see. I've been working on this vision of a sustainable world for a long time. I can literally see it in technicolor, in some detail, and it gets better and better. The more I learn, the more I ask other people. It lives in me as a sustainable world that isn't a sacrifice or a bunch of difficult regulations, a sustainable world that I would love to live in. And having such a vision alive in me prevents me from selling out to something less that someone else may be offering me, such as the vision of perpetual economic growth, which is pretty much the vision that the whole field of economics gives us. Growth isn't what I want. Growth has nothing to do with what I want. And I think the only reason growth, which is a terribly abstract and when you think about it, stupid vision of the future. I think the only reason that can be sold so easily in every policy arena is that there's no alternative vision. There's nothing real and better that's being offered. So vision, first of all, gives you a power to be resistant to seductive, short-term, not very well thought through, self-centered visions that are being offered by many other kinds of people in the world. And furthermore, when I'm clear about a vision that I'm trying to bring forth, it informs my choices in an amazing way. It makes me see options I wouldn't have seen if I didn't have the vision. It opens my eyes to good news as well as the cynical bad news that the press and most communications in our society tell us about all the time. It makes me see the little seeds of the vision, the little experiments in that vision already on the ground, happening all over the world. And it makes me see that those are the places to be watered and nourished and brought forth, because that's the vision already coming into being. And when you see that a sustainable world when you're clear on your vision of what that is, I guarantee you, this has happened to me, you will see it in pieces and in patches everywhere coming into being. And that tells you where to throw your energy and who your partners are. And so in a very practical way, and I assure you I'm not a visionary person. I don't think I've ever before in my life given a talk on vision. I am amazed at the practicality of visioning in terms of helping you to find your way. So, what is your vision of that which you are working for, or you wouldn't have come to this conference, of a sustainable world? Not just solving the problems of clear problems of unsustainability that are all around us, not just survival, which tends to be about the highest level of vision that most environmentalists put out in the world. Let's survive, folks. But what do you really want? It is, of course, a world where resource regeneration is at least as great as resource depletion. It's a world where emissions are no greater than the ability of the planet to absorb and process those emissions. Of course, it's a world where population is stable or maybe even decreasing human population, where prices internalize all costs. Of course, this is all part of the vision. A place where no one is hungry or desperately poor, a place where there is true enduring democracy. These are some of the things I have in my part of the vision. But most of those are physically necessary or socially necessary parts of the vision. They form the responsible structure that you know has got to be part of the vision. But then what else? What more? What will make this a world that would make you excited to get up in the morning and go to work in it? That would make you feel wonderful about the possible future for your children and your grandchildren, excited at what they will have the opportunity to bring forth. What kind of world would that be? Some of you will find that this is easy. You've already thought about it many times. Some of you are going to find this hard, and maybe all those forms of resistance will be coming up as you try to find that vision. And honor the forms of resistance. They tell you things about your pain and your struggle and your scars and your culture. But try now. I've never tried this before either, especially not with a group this size. I'm going to ask you in a moment to close your eyes, because that's the best place to find the vision, is within yourself without distractions. And I'm going to lead just a little, ask you to literally look in your mind's eye at a sustainable world. And what I caution you to do, since I've done this now many times, is don't push it. Don't feel that you're a failure if nothing comes. And don't grasp too hard to see something. Just notice what happens. That's all you have to do. This needs to be a very relaxing exercise. If you may see, some people do, brilliant, detailed pictures. You may see nothing. You may hear something instead of seeing something, or feel something. You may see colors. Whatever comes up, your mind will do what your mind does, and that's fine. If my voice, while we're doing this, doesn't help or gets in the way or points you in the wrong direction, ignore me and follow your vision. And just see what happens. This will take only a few minutes because we're behind schedule. It would be better to do it for a longer time, but I'm just going to give you a demonstration. You can do it later in a more relaxed setting, anytime you want, for as long as you want. So first of all, just get in a relaxed, comfortable position. Close your eyes and take one really good deep breath. Put yourself in a sustainable world that you really want to live in. Put yourself right in that world. Start near at home, in your home, whatever your home looks like, a home you would love to live in, that's comfortable and beautiful and sustainable. And look around. What does that home look like, inside and outside? Who's there? What does it feel like to live there, to work there, to eat there, to get up in the morning? What does it feel like to walk out the door into your community, your neighborhood? Rural or urban or in between? What's the neighborhood like? One you would love to live in, that is sustainable, and that knows itself to be sustainable, a world that could be handed on intact or even better to the children and the grandchildren of that neighborhood. Physically, what is the neighborhood like? What's the built environment look like? Where is nature? And what is it like? What kind of energy is powering this neighborhood? What kinds of materials? Where does the water come from? Where does it go? Who's living there? How do they make their living? Where do they go to make their living, if out of the neighborhood? And how do they get there? How do you communicate in the neighborhood and with other neighborhoods? How often? By what means? About what? And now if you can, move up to a little bit bigger view of several neighborhoods together, a whole city or a whole rural area, a whole state or province where you live, working sustainably in a way that you would love it to work. Look at your whole nation. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How are decisions made? How are conflicts resolved? What kinds of technologies are being used and being born? Now go to the whole world, sustainable, full of nations and neighborhoods and cities and rural areas where people love to live, where they know that their children and their grandchildren will have an even more intact, more sustainable, more exciting world than they live in. What kind of world is that? How do people of different kinds and colors and cultures communicate? How do they learn from each other? How do they get along with each other? How do they resolve conflicts? spend just another few seconds in your sustainable world looking at anything you want to look at, or envisioning anything you want to envision about this world in which you would love to live. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come on back to the unsustainable real world. And thank you for doing that, everybody. This is an experiment on my part. And I know that it's silly and embarrassing to do this. And let me suggest, just to make an icebreaker for the conference so you know you have something to talk about at lunch or the next coffee break, let's declare this conference a vision-free zone where it's all right to share your visions with other people. And it may even be all right to ask other people what their visions are, okay? Is this a fair deal? Okay. And I just want to end by saying, of course, visioning is not enough. I know that. I'm very aware we still have to do all that other work, information and monitoring and indicators and models and policies and laws and raising money and all of that. Visioning is the first step and the continuous step, because visions continue to get revised and shared and built and elaborated and made more rich and more true. But it's only one step. And fortunately, we have the whole rest of the conference and many other speakers to talk about the other steps. All of that, including what I had intended to say here, are topics for other and very important talks. But I just urge you to bring vision into those talks, whether you're giving them or receiving them, and into everything you do. It makes an amazing difference. As the song which started this conference said, "Por un mañana feliz." Un mañana feliz, in any language, what does it look like? Share it with other people. Thank you.